Good morning. It is July 26, 2024. Getting kind of halfway through. We're a little bit past halfway through the 100 days of the summer battle. And a lot of people, I think, are starting to come back into good shape. The weather forecast is not ideal, I believe, next week. I see some 90s back in the weather. However, as it is the end of July into August, this will be traditionally the hottest period we would see in Ohio. Dr. Gardner, correct me if that's the case. But online today, we had Dr. Wu and Dr. Dave Gardner. Dr. Wu, take it away with the insects.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to make it back after a flight cancellation on the 19th due to the NI system outage. Hope everyone has been going well in the past a few weeks while I was gone. I have two things to mention today. One thing is that recently we have received several inquiries regarding the known damage, whether they're caused by pests or disease. So I would like to refresh what Dr. Dave Shatner mentioned last time, is that at this time of year, really the only two major pests that can cause problems. One is the billbugs, another one is chinchbugs. So billbugs, we can check that by using tag test, and if they can easily pull up, the stem can be easily broken. And if the feces can be disclosed from the feeding damage. And for chinchbugs, and they're pretty small, but can be seen using water soaking using arena in the area. They can be float to the surface pretty easily. And especially the damage can be seen by the edge of the damaged area, by the yellowing of the grass. So at this time, the annual grubs are mostly in the egg stage with newly hatched. So there's no big concerns until there are male drone beetles. And occasionally you may say a caterpillar damage, but unless that high densities, otherwise there's no big worries. And also those surface feeding pests, they can be easily disclosed using soap flashes as well. Another thing, so according to the pictures we have received, I would say they are more likely to be disease damage rather than pests, and especially the weather, the warm and the humid weather we have experienced that are favorable for the disease occurrence. Another thing I would like to mention is that I'm seeking for a chinchbug site for my research trial. So if you're aware or have a site available, I appreciate if you could let me know. And here's my contact information. Yeah, I would appreciate if you could let me know you have a site available to support my work. Thank you. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. If we can give the screen back, there we go. Good job. One thing, I guess, any predictions on what you're seeing for grub risk around the state? Is it increased? Do you think we're going to have a lot more activity this year?
I think because we have lots of rainfalls this month, so that's highly favorable for the egg survival, the grub egg survival, because they need some moisture to hatch. So that in that way that favors the activity of the white grubs this fall. And also Dr. Dave Shatner mentioned that as well. So we may expect to have high grub activities this year. So really need to keep an eye on that, and especially in early August, and check if you have densities, if you have not applied any preventative control of grubs, especially in the past, if you have a history of white grub populations, you might want to watch out. And if you have not applied anything yet, I would say you can still do scouting of the past densities. If the warrants the control, for example, about it reached the treatment threshold, I would say you can put still can put a preventive control by early to mid-August. And after that, you may want to put a curative control if damage shows up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Dr. Gardner.
Well, good morning, everybody. So yeah, as Ed said, it is supposed to get hot next week, and it has been dry for a while. What I'm showing here is the U.S. Drought Monitor, but just for the state of Ohio. And you can see that depending on where you are in Ohio, it's anywhere from fine in the northwest part of the state to abnormally dry. And then you have a severe drought in the Appalachian counties. But then if you look at the 5 to 7 day total accumulation of precipitation forecast, this is provided by the National Weather Service as well. You can see that in those drought-stricken areas, they're calling for anywhere from 1 3/4 to 2 inches of rain to be delivered over the next 7 days, with lighter amounts as you go north and west. Now, this is the third time during this extended dry period that the forecast further out has called for a little bit of relief in our drought situation. Right now, they're calling for a 70% chance of rain here in Columbus on Monday and Tuesday. They reissue the forecasts on the 11s and the 4s to change the language from today to this afternoon to this evening, etc. And, you know, as we go closer to Monday and Tuesday, if they keep that 70% chance of rain, then that means that they're fairly confident that, you know, like there is a good chance that we're going to get rain. But what happened the last couple of times is that it was a 70% chance of rain 4 days out, and then it became a 50% chance of rain 3 days out, and then it became a 30% chance of rain 2 days out. And then on the day that it was supposed to rain, we didn't get any. These things happen, but hopefully, like I said, there is some glimmer of hope in the forecast that we might get a little bit of precipitation that might ease some of the drought symptoms that we're seeing. Now, I'm getting a lot of pictures sent to me from folks that are seeing coarser grasses in their lawns and other turf grass areas. And what I would say is that right now, the cool season grasses, unless you're irrigating them very well, they're probably, you know, pretty dormant, which means that you're not mowing all that often, which means that the warm season grasses have a competitive advantage, not only because they do better in hotter, drier conditions, but also if you're not mowing as much, then, you know, those can become quite visible in the lawn. So generally speaking, when somebody sends me a picture of a coarser bladed warm season grass and they're like, what is this? Number one, I would say if there's a seed head on the picture, it makes it so much more helpful for me to try to discern what the grass is. But I'm surprised at the number of times that I see a large coarsely bladed grass and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. And then when it finally blooms, it's like, oh, it's barnyard grass. Pretty much in the whole scheme of things, unless you have a paspalum problem, if you see a bizarre coarsely bladed grass, it's barnyard grass until proven otherwise. But I also got a picture this last week from some guys that were playing golf, and they were like, hey, what's this? And that is our friend Japanese stilt grass, so Microstegium. This is a plant that was introduced to the U.S. back in 1919 and just recently has become something that, while it is considered invasive, it's something that we're seeing more frequently, particularly in our managed turf grass areas. Now, the fortunate thing about this particular grass is that we do have some control options. So it is something that comes from seed. So you can use things like prodiamine dithiopyr where you have this problem, but post-emergence, phenoxyprop is the herbicide that has been identified as relatively more effective with this on. Remember, that's the herbicide acclaim, and if you used that back in the 1990s, you're familiar with it having an antagonism with our group 4 herbicides like 2,4-D or MCPP. So you have to be careful with when you apply it relative to those broadleaf herbicides if you're applying both. But if you're just trying to get rid of Microstegium, then phenoxyprop is something that is thought to work relatively well for that. Now, there's a lot of other grasses that we're seeing too. So like quackgrass, for example, even though that's a cool season grass, it's relatively more robust. And so it's you know, something that's maybe a little bit more visible in our dormant turf. And so I get the question, have you ever found a mixture of herbicides that results in selective control of quackgrass? And the answer elegantly and simply is no. No, there is not. There was one time that I had some evidence to suggest that the herbicide, the active ingredient sulfursulfuron, if applied to quackgrass that was actively growing over dormant Kentucky bluegrass, that you could get selective control. However, you know, that herbicide is generally not labeled for use in the north in turf grass now because it causes substantial damage to the cool season grasses. So do not do that. Okay. So things like quackgrass, orchard grass, Bermuda grass, you know, all of these grasses like nimblewill, for example, all of these have a competitive advantage at this time of the year. And so they're more green than our desired turf grasses. And so, but this is a great time to spot them because then you can get ready to renovate those areas this fall. You might occasionally also see patches that resemble disease or insect damage. And if you dig into those and you see imbibed stout stolons, that's actually rough bluegrass that's gone dormant. But anyway, there's a variety of grassy weed issues that we're seeing right now. So with the ones that are green and actively growing, glyphosate applied 1 to 2 weeks prior to when it is that you intend to renovate is what we usually recommend. Okay, now the rough bluegrass is a little bit more difficult because you can't apply glyphosate to dormant rough bluegrass. It will just sit there. You have to wait for the rough bluegrass to come back. Then you have to kill it. Then you can renovate. So that makes rough bluegrass, you know, a little bit more annoying. But all of those other grasses, you know, if you have them, they should be pretty visible. And now's the time to be thinking about getting rid of them with an eye towards renovating areas. Now, creeping bentgrass is another one that you might see infesting your lawn areas. And with that one, you can use glyphosate, but mesotrione, tenacity, that is another one where you can get some selective control. Now, some people report wonderful results using this program. Other people say, well, it worked for like 1 year and then the creeping bentgrass came back after 1 or 2 years. And then there's other people that were like, hey, this completely took care of the problem. So what I'm saying is that I can't predict whether or not you would get 100% control that would be long lasting, but just know that this is a selective option. So you make 3 applications at 5 ounces per acre, 2 to 3 weeks apart if you're on bluegrass or tall fescue, 3 weeks apart if it's on ryegrass because tenacity is a little bit more phytotoxic to ryegrass. But with that 3rd application, then you can apply the seed, rake it in, spray the mesotrione over the top, put your mulch down, start watering, and it's a beautiful thing. The only thing that comes up is your intended turf grass seed, and you get pretty good control of just about everything else, including that final blow to the creeping bentgrass that you were trying to control. Now, a note on the mesotrione for those of you that do not have commercial spray equipment, 5 fluid ounces per acre is not a particularly large rate, right? So if you're thinking about putting that in a backpack, you're talking about applying milliliter quantities, so, you know, smaller than most medicine droppers. And also it would need to be a pressure regulated sprayer. If it's just a pump action backpack, the chances that you would be able to make this application accurately are not particularly good. And so I would say, given the cost considerations and the difficulty associated with applying, if you're not a professional applicator, honestly, the glyphosate is probably the better way to go. A note on that. So glyphosate for renovation is a wonderful product because it doesn't leave a residual. So you get good control of all of your weeds, but then it doesn't leave a pre-emergence barrier that would interfere with your seedling emergence. Most of the glyphosate alternatives that are on the market now include herbicides with a much longer residual activity. So in other words, after you spray those, read the label carefully, but it will usually say that you need to wait up to 4 weeks before you can put your seed down. Whereas with glyphosate, the label was 1 week. Okay. And technically, if you knew what you were doing, you could get away with spraying it the next day. I'm not supposed to say things like that because that's a violation of the label, blah, blah, federal law. Anyway, if you look at the label for most of the glyphosate replacements, they say don't be putting seed down for at least 4 weeks after application. So do bear that in mind if you're using a non-glyphosate alternative as your non-selective herbicide when renovating these grasses. Ed, that's what I have for today.
Thank you, David. One thing, obviously, we'll talk more about renovations going forward into the month of August, but for people who are thinking about renovating their lawns, Dave, if they're not going to do it themselves, when would you recommend they start talking to landscapers, professional contractors about getting this done, and what kind of dates should they be thinking about? Because this will get packed up.
Yeah, you know, the window of application that we usually say for seeding is August 15th to September 15th, but I've been more of the opinion that September 1, the month of September basically is better. By October 1, you're going to start to see a decrease in your seedling performance and your overall establishment success. But August in a year like this, it's a little bit drier and hotter than probably you want while you're trying to establish seedlings. And so, I would think about the renovation process. If it's mesotrione selective for bent grass, now's about the time, hence the reason that I was talking about this today, with the caveat that we'll talk about renovation more as we go on. But with any application where you're going to use glyphosate a week to 2 before you're going to do the renovation. If you do it 2 weeks before, if anything grows back, you can make a second application. If you're using one of the glyphosate alternatives, then now is about the time, because that would allow you to seed towards the 1st of September. But that September 1 to September 30 window is generally better. Now, ryegrass and tall fescue, you can get away with seeding later because they germinate quicker and they establish more rapidly. It's the Kentucky bluegrass that in particular you want to make sure that you have down, preferably by the middle of September, but no later than September 30th. And it's not to say that you can't put seed down after October 1. It's just that the establishment success goes down afterwards. And that's a function of weather, which is not exactly predictable. But I mean, you see contractors throwing seed down like November 1st all the time. It's just when you go back in the springtime, it's like, ha, 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 they put that down in November. They got some grass and, like they never come back and reseed it again. It's like it eventually fills in. It's just, if you're trying to, get the perfect establishment with exactly the grasses that you intend to have and no other competing weeds, then that's why we say that September window is the better time.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gardner. From a disease standpoint, relatively quiet this week. We didn't have a huge amount of high temperatures, so some suppression. I would think the dollar spot probably has made a bit of a comeback, but with the high temperatures next week, it may be worthwhile getting some phosphites out there, particularly if that rainfall number starts to come through. With that, we'll wrap it up. A couple of things to keep in mind. The OSU OTF field day is coming up August 15th, Dr. Gardner, is that correct? And then the OLCA field day is the day after.
13th, Tuesday the 13th.
Sorry,
Wednesday.
Tuesday the 13th of August. And
Have a
then
bunch of
14th
people
of
showing up.
August.
Yeah, a bunch of people showing up here on Thursday. They're going to be mad.
Well, we have the low input turfgrass field day on the Thursday, but that is not quite the same as the field day for OTF on the Tuesday, the 13th of August, and then the 14th is the OLCA field day. So you got a range of the OSU faculty in there talking about some of their ongoing research projects, also some updates on tick issues, urban landscape pests, and then, like I said, we have our low input field day on August 13th, 14th, 15th. And that one is looking at an ongoing trial where we've put in lower input nutrients for home lawns. So if you're available, please feel free to come out. We'd love to see you out there. All right, with that, Dr. Gardner, you got something to add before I go?
Well, I was going to say, those of you that come to field day, we're looking forward to seeing you. But you remember, you come in on the east side of the Waterman Farm complex, and then there's that nice dirt road that you take to come over and park in the grass next to our turf center. That road's closed. We're having a meeting on Monday to figure out exactly how it is that we're going to deal with that. So we'll probably update on this program and, like in our future announcements as we get closer to field day as to how it is that you're actually supposed to get to field day this year, because it'll be a little bit different than what it's been previously.
And that is due to ongoing development work at the farm. So this is something.
It's exciting times. I mean, it's like a 10, 20, $30 million building that they're putting in. It's a good thing.
50 was the number, but anyway, who's counting these
It's more
days?
money than you can shake a stick at.
Yes. Okay, thank you, folks. We'll talk to you all next week.